I didn't discover my mother's 30-year secret until the day we buried her, and somehow it made me love her more than I ever thought possible. The lawyer's office felt too cold for the grief still heavy in my chest, and I sat beside my father as the lawyer read my mother's final wishes. I nodded along until he said a name I had never heard before. The remaining 50% of liquid assets will be transferred to Nora Adams. I looked at my father expecting confusion that matched my own, but his face had gone completely white, and my mother's sister was staring at the floor like she wanted to disappear. Everyone over 40 in that room was avoiding my eyes like they were all in on a secret I had never been told. "Who is Nora Adams?" I asked, but my father was already walking toward the door without a word. I caught my father in the parking lot and blocked his car door until he had no choice but to face me. "Who is she?" I demanded, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something I had never seen in him before. Something that looked a lot like shame. "I don't deserve to be the one who tells you," he said quietly. "Your mother wanted you to know the truth, so she'll tell you in her own way. Look in her sewing room." He pushed past me and drove off before I could ask anything else, and I spent the next 3 days torn between grief and a growing sense that my entire childhood had been built on lies. I finally tracked down an address for Nora Adams in a small town 40 minutes from where I grew up, and when she opened the door, I was looking at a woman my age with my father's nose and my grandmother's curly dark hair. "I was wondering when you would come find me," she said, her eyes swollen from days of crying. "Your mother was the only reason I survived, and I don't know how to exist without her." I demanded answers, but she shook her head and told me to find the box in the sewing room closet because my mother's words would explain everything better than she ever could. I drove straight to my aunt's house and told her I wasn't leaving until she explained what everyone was hiding from me. "She's your half-sister," my aunt finally admitted. "Your father had an affair 32 years ago, and the other woman abandoned the baby at the hospital. Your mother found out about all of it." I felt sick to my stomach. My father was a cheater, and my mother had kept his secret and apparently raised his mistake behind my back for 3 decades. "I can't believe she lied to me my whole life," I said, and my aunt grabbed my shoulders hard. "Go read what's in that closet before you judge her. You have no idea what your mother did." I drove to my mother's house and tore through the sewing room closet until I found a wooden box hidden behind the fabric bins. Inside were hundreds of letters in my mother's handwriting and photographs spanning 3 decades of a little girl growing into a woman. There were tuition receipts for private school and college, birthday cards signed from someone who loves you more than you know, and photographs of graduation ceremonies where my mother stood in the back wearing sunglasses like she was trying not to be recognized. I found a letter she had written to Nora on her 18th birthday that explained everything, how she discovered the affair and drove to the hospital intending to scream at the other woman, only to learn she had abandoned her newborn and disappeared. "I looked at you through the nursery window, and you were so small and so alone, and I knew I had a choice to make," my mother wrote. "I could hate you for something that was never your fault, or I could love you and make sure you had the life you deserved. I never told your father I knew, and I never told you who I really was, because I didn't want either of you to feel like you owed me anything. Being your secret mother was the greatest honor of my life. I got to raise 2 daughters and love them both completely, and neither of them ever knew the other existed. My sweet Nora, you were never a mistake. You were my choice, every single day for 30 years. I sat on my mother's floor and sobbed because I had walked into that room ready to hate her for lying, and instead, I found out I never really knew her at all. I showed up at Nora's house that night, and when she opened the door, her face crumpled at the sight of me. "You came back," she whispered, and I could see her hands shaking as she gripped the doorframe. I handed her the letter without saying a word and watched her eyes move across the page. "She called me her daughter," Nora said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never knew she thought of me that way." I stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. "I didn't lose half my inheritance," I told her. "I gained a sister." She held on to me and said the only thing she ever wanted was a family, and I realized our mother had spent 30 years making sure that one day we would find each other.